Hey, it's Tawana here, full-time entrepreneur, full-time mom. I'm here to tell you that having Brian, or should I say Mr. Watts, as a resource for my son throughout his high school years has been extremely instrumental in making sure he got and stayed scholarship ready. Even now, as a freshman in college, my son knows that Mr. Watts is just a call away. So you want someone in your child's life that has the experience that Brian brings. You want someone who has the relatability factor that Brian brings. You need someone like this on your child's team. It takes a village, and it is great to have Mr. Watts as a part of your village.
Hey everybody, Brian JT Watts back again with another episode of Come Together. Kind of excited today. It's always good when I have my boys from college. So another young man that went to college with me, we're going to bring him out and introduce him to you today right after the opening. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with my man, Brian McGhee. This is the greatest game of telephone that has ever been played. Someone said the black man doesn't raise his kids or care for his family, and that message is still being told to everyone today. They even have us saying,
"We are not a monolith. We have various opinions and thoughts. We are much more than what we are portrayed to be by the media.
Even when we are the victims of injustice, we are still portrayed as the perpetrators. When it comes to the black man, there is an intentional plan to discredit the past, arrest the present, and destroy the future.
Something must be done, but nothing will work until we come together."
All right, people. Today I have one of my boys went to college with me and feeling good, feeling comfortable, no nervousness to interview my people. My man, Brian McGhee, who is now the Director of Sales for Radio 1 here in D.C. What's going on, Brian? How you feeling, man?
Man, I'm feeling great. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
No doubt, no doubt. Our show is all about just exposing the positivity of black men, and I felt like you were a positive brother, and I hope you would agree with me. So we wanted to get ahead and have you on.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No doubt, no doubt. And you know, it doesn't help that you're actually doing something with your life too. That always helps. That's always a positive thing, man. So tell me, how I know you haven't been in the DMV for long. You're actually in Maryland. How's the move here? How's that feeling?
You know, transition from Illinois to Maryland has been different. I'll tell you, the things you hear about the DMV are absolutely true. The traffic is real.
Yes.
And the pace, I would say the pace of East Coast life, you think you could prepare for it, but you really can't. I've lived in a lot of cities and a lot of places. You and I both spent some time in Nashville. I spent some time in St. Louis, but a lot of that was Midwest. So a lot of my moves have been in even Huntsville, Alabama was in the South, but more like a Midwestern feel.
Right.
So this is my first time really being immersed in an East Coast demographic, and it's everything I heard it would be.
Hey, listen, there are no lies. We don't have time for the lies here. It's just what it is. So, right. Director of Sales for Radio 1. Now, I know a lot of people know about different radio stations, but they don't know about radio conglomerates or things of that nature.
Absolutely.
So explain to the people first what Radio 1 is and the scope of Radio 1, and then break down what you do as a director of sales.
Absolutely. So a quick background on Radio 1 as a company owns radio stations in about 14 different markets. Don't quote me on that number. But we own radio stations in a lot of the markets, a lot of the larger urban areas, Houston, Dallas, a lot of Midwest markets in Ohio. We have stations in Atlanta, stations in Charlotte, Raleigh, Richmond, here in DC. So in a lot of urban areas, Radio 1 is a major player in the media landscape. So our competitors are, the iHeart Medias, which I spent a lot of years working for iHeart, Odyssey, which formerly known as Intercom, formerly known as CBS Radio. There are a lot of big companies out there, but Radio One is one of the major players when it comes to the urban formats. And when I say urban, I mean the R&B, the hip hop, the gospel format, the formats that speak to people of color. So most of our stations, there are a few exceptions, but most of our stations target the African American population. The company was founded by Kathy Hughes. And if you haven't seen the movie Talk to Me, starring Don Cheadle, which is actually based on the true story of our first station here in DC, which is a great, very entertaining movie. But I mentioned before that I spent some time with other media companies, but this move was intentional because I did want to work for a company that spoke to Black people and has an authentic relationship with that audience. I thought this was strategic. So coming here as director of sales, in my previous position, I was actually a market president and I actually ran the market. Okay. But this move was intentional. Again, I wanted to work for this company for all the reasons I just said. So my job as director of sales is to manage all aspects of the revenue. So radio, if you think about it, is divided into two different businesses: the business of programming and the business of sales. Okay. The programming is 100% content to entertain our audience and to attract as many listeners and interact with on the largest scale possible. Right. The other end of the building, the sales, is to generate as much revenue from that content as possible. So I manage a team of salespeople and managers who spend their day creating partnerships, creating relationships with businesses who invest in our stations and our brands. We have 5 stations here in DC. And every time you hear a commercial break, that's my team doing their job.
So commercials don't just pop up from nowhere. I mean, you have to actually go out and get this company to say, yes, we want to spend our money with you. We want to advertise on your stations to your audience.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that is and I mean, it's weird because we all watch commercials on TV. We all hear commercials on the radio. I know that people know somebody had to get that deal. But I don't think that people realize that it's an ongoing thing because we just hear commercials so much. We assume, okay, well, you got that deal with them. They're there for you forever. And no, it's constant. I mean, because I've seen your team, I've seen a couple of people, and it looks like they're always working. Like, I mean, always. Really trying to do something new. So what is the goal? I mean, I know that you want commercials. You have a lot of commercials on the radio, I'm sure. Is there a top limit? Can you oversell where you have too much now? Or is it just like, no, just keep selling as much as you can?
That's actually a great question because a lot of people don't know that by law, you can only sell so many minutes per hour of commercial programming. You cannot sell. I couldn't sell 50 of the 60 minutes, even if I had the best sales team in the world. The FCC only allows so many minutes per hour.
Right.
Before you get a hefty fine. So the idea is to maximize that limited inventory and strategically place it. I mean, there are stations who seem like they go into commercial breaks every time they play 2 songs. Right. They go in another commercial break. And then there are other stations who you will hear 12 in a row, right. And then you have a commercial break that lasts 20 minutes. Right. So trying to pick that sweet spot between not losing listeners when you go into a commercial block, and also still maximizing the amount of money that you can generate from every hour. That there are hours that are more important. We call them drive times. The 6 to 10 a.m. and then the 3 to 7 p.m.
That morning show, no doubt. Yeah.
Morning show and the afternoon show. Right. That's when you put your best talent on. That's when you really the commercials can cost 10 times more than they do, in the evening. So, and sometimes even more than that. So,
Okay.
it's an interesting game, but there are rules to the game, and you can only sell so many minutes in and out.
That's amazing. I mean, I actually need a director of sales on here because I need to get some more commercials on here. But that would be great. I mean, it's amazing to hear sometimes the things that we take for granted. Somebody is out there working hard to get done, and there's so many things now with the influx of technology and media being like everything. There are so many jobs that I don't think a lot of people know about. So I'm sure some of our viewers never thought about the fact that not just that there's a guy out there doing that, but there's a team, out there working on this and all of the just little things that go along, all the intricacies that go along with it. So that's big. Now, I remember there's a couple of things we did together when we were in college, but I do remember both of us working at the famed radio station of our college. And of course, you, like most of the other people that worked at the radio stations, were into the whole communications game and stuff like that. I, on the other hand, was a math major who had no business up there at all. but I always wanted to be on the radio. And
we know why. God gave you that voice.
No, my voice is not why I wanted to be on. I just wanted to be on. I mean, I just wanted to be talking, and so I remember working over the summer when there's nobody there, and they needed people badly, and they needed to be bad enough. They were like, "Okay, come on." And so it's so weird that's when I found out the difference between different types of radio stations and what was needed and desired. So at our school, of course, it was a Christian radio station, and we were. And I get on with my South Bronx accent, which is probably way stronger then than it is now. And the directors and stuff are like, Brian, you got to turn that down. I'm like, what? It's me, man. What do you mean? They're like, yeah, your smoothness of your voice is good, all this stuff, but that accent, man, that's just to slow down with your speech and try to calm down. And I was like, what?
And I'm glad you said that, because that is one of the first things that I realized I had an advantage being from the Midwest.
Yes.
We really have no accent.
Right.
So
absent of accent, for real. Like just
so I started at the station on a Monday and I was on the air Tuesday. It was
that's amazing. Well, the funny thing was there was a R&B and hip hop station, WEUP, down the street, and the young lady, she knew some of the people that worked at our station, so she listened one day and she heard me. She came to the station. A DJ, Charlotte Dene, I still remember. She came to the station and she said, "Are you Brian Watts?" And I said, "Yes." "Well, how do you know me?" Because truthfully, this is gonna sound ignorant. Even though I was working on the radio, I swore nobody's listening to me. I was just there doing my job. I was actually just trying to make some money for the summer. And so when people would come and say they heard me, I'm like, oh, wow, this is working. Like, yeah, I'm really going out there. She said, "Hey, I love your accent. Can you come work at WEP?" And I was like, wait a minute. They hate me over here, my accent over here. They love it over there. But it was R&B and hip hop. And hip hop was authentically New York. So, okay, right. Yeah, pull him in. But I never went and did it because, I mean, it was just too much. I didn't feel like I could be playing gospel 1 hour and then playing rump shaker music the next. So I was like, I don't want conflict in my life. But that's when I started to realize, okay, it's not that my accent is bad. It just doesn't work in this format. And so I think a lot of people need to see that radio is so vast that you can be diverse. Anybody. Yeah, you can be. I mean, you got country stations. You got all kind of stations, easy listening. I mean, it just runs the gamut. And I don't think a lot of people realize that that's out there. So that's good that you're in something that you could actually redefine yourself at any moment, in that field.
Yeah. And you mentioned all the different formats, and there are still formats emerging. I mean, 10 years ago, you didn't have any stations dedicated to 24 hours to sports gambling, but there are stations popping up in every major city in America just dedicated to sports gambling. That's all they talk about.
It's a talk radio format, but for gambling.
100% of the content is geared toward people who sports bet. As it becomes legalized in a lot of states, and they are dedicating entire 50,000 watt signals to stations to talk sports betting. It is a huge business. Um, and I know this because some of the clients that I talk to are doing business with those stations.
Right.
So it's an emerging format. There are Spanish language formats popping up everywhere. They used to be, in a handful of places, California, Florida, Texas. They are everywhere now. As the Spanish speaking population continues to grow,
Right.
there are stations in, Minnesota that are 100% Spanish speaking stations.
Wow.
There are formats. You mentioned, not only different genres of music, but there's right wing talk, there's left wing talk.
That's right.
There's different formats in different parts of the country to appeal to whatever that audience wants. So the radio landscape is really changing. And one of the things you touched on, earlier, about how much can you sell? How much? Of course, over the air, we call that terrestrial radio. Terrestrial radio is limited. We can only sell so many minutes an hour. I think that's somewhere between 14 and 16 minutes an hour. Don't quote me. But what people don't realize is that in 2024, we are selling more than the commercials that you hear on the air.
Okay.
You could be streaming my platform. You could be streaming one of our stations.
Right.
In fact, you could be listening to whatever you want on an ad-supported platform like Spotify or iHeartRadio or TuneIn. These are all streaming platforms that people like and are used to. And I can still serve commercials on those platforms. So with the rise of digital media and the magic that goes into that, all you have to tell me is who you're trying to reach.
Wow.
And I can find those people wherever they're listening on whatever platform. I can even serve video ads, not only on social media, but I can serve video ads almost anywhere. I can serve them on your television screen. I can serve video ads. If you are streaming Hulu, okay, the version of Hulu that is ad supported, my team can sell commercials that will appear on Hulu. So I have clients who not only buy radio commercials for me and target my station listeners, but if it's a Honda dealer that only wants certain zip codes, I can also give them 50,000 impressions in their trade area across ad-supported television, which is crazy to think, right?
You know what? I didn't even think about the fact that I wasn't even thinking about local stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking about the big commercials.
The Nationals, the McDonald's, the Wendy's. Right.
Right. The local people come, get served right to their area. And so if they have places in the DMV, they want to talk to people in the DMV and they want to talk to the people that they want to talk to. So if that is your listenership, then that is who they want to get with.
So you set me up perfectly, because another thing that I wanted to talk to is there might be people who watch your show who are business owners who have never thought about advertising on the radio. I will say radio is the great equalizer. Okay. You've watched the Super Bowl and you see all the ads for, the Geico and the Coke or Pepsi.
Dunkin'
Donuts. You see the big national advertisers. Right. And then at some point in the middle of the Super Bowl, they go into this local break and you'll see like a jewelry store that's down the street. And then the drop in the quality of the ad goes down so far. And you go, why would they ever want their commercial to run next to, the funniest Doritos commercial ever made?
Exactly.
But radio is an equalizer, because if done right, your creative can sound on the same level as a national ad.
Okay.
And the best advertisers who really commit to radio know that. And they know that, hey, if I'm a restaurant, I can make my burger sound just as good as Burger King can make their Whopper look on TV. In fact, better.
Right.
Because it's theater of the mind and the power of imagination.
Right.
And a lot of things that go into, audio advertising. And then the quality, the production quality is easier there's less of a gap
Right.
between the commercials produced by these New York agencies and the ones that my team can create right here in DC. So a lot of advertisers who know that and get that are getting really good results being on radio, whereas on television you really have to match that quality
Right.
between local and national advertising.
It's a lot of money on TV to match it. I mean,
A lot.
it's not close to as much on radio. That's true. You could be right beside anybody who's national
Mhm.
and sound exactly the same, especially if the DJ or the person on is doing your ad, and they go from one thing to another and it's still in their voice, they're pushing it like they know it. That's great. Every time I hear something, I'm like, wow, that's great. That's hot. Because it's the same person who's been talking to you the whole show.
That's great. And man, it's almost like, and I promise you, we didn't script this. You did not. You couldn't have teed it up more perfectly, Brian, because that's another advantage that I always tell people. What other medium can you use the talent to endorse your product?
Right. Right.
And that is something that the best advertisers do. We have talent well known here in DC. You can probably name them all, and the people that walk the halls of my building.
Yes. Well,
I remember
because of you. So yeah, that's true.
and I got here and I was thinking, man, I'm working in the same building with Donnie Simpson. Hey, Donnie Simpson is, he's
legend.
A legend. How do you not have Donnie Simpson pitching your business or your product? How do you not take advantage of that? So radio does have some clear advantages over other media. That's something that TV can't give you. That's something that newspaper can't give you.
Right.
Google advertising can't give you that. But radio can. The same, like you said, the same person I'm listening to DL Hughley in the afternoon, but DL Hughley could also be the voice of your brand.
That's right.
Which and think how many people trust the person they hear every day on their way to work, on their way home from work, or while they work. How many people hear and listen to somebody talking about who they do business with, or a product they just bought, or a service that they use personally? Huge game changer.
Definitely. I mean, it's crazy. Radio has become one of those things that's just so common for us, especially when you get in the car. You just get in the car and it's on. I don't travel at all without the radio on.
Yeah.
I mean, even if somebody's in my car talking, the radio's on. It might be a little lower, but it's still on. And sometimes I want that person to stop talking so I can hear the radio.
I can hear that. But here's the thing. The biggest misconception, Brian, is that people say, I don't listen to the radio. And there's some truth to that, but then I think what people really are saying is I don't intentionally listen to the radio.
Right.
I listen to it while I'm doing something else, or like you said, it's on.
Right.
But people will swear, "Oh, I listen to playlists. I listen to this. And I only listen to Spotify." And it's you can ask a couple of questions, and really quick you'll get to, well, yeah, you wouldn't know that if you didn't. How do you even build a playlist if you haven't discovered new music somewhere, haven't been exposed to it somewhere? There's somewhere that you go that the radio is playing, or those 12 minutes that you might be in the car in between playlists.
Right.
You're not listening to the same playlist you built 3 years ago.
Well,
you're not. You get tired of it.
I got a problem with that, but most people are not. You are correct, because people have ridden my car maybe 2 or 3 times and they're already sick of my playlist. So that's how it's the same thing for me. But I feel you. That's very true. And radio is one of the things to me that has stood the test of time and has not had to change a lot.
Right.
Because it's still a DJ playing music, coming on, talking, doing their thing, playing commercials. But I mean, TV has changed, all the streaming, all the everything. But these other things have seemed to come around radio, and radio is still there doing its thing. And it's so weird that it's like the same. I remember being a kid and my dad blasting WBLS in the house. We're just listening to all the great music. You know, I remember being a kid in the South Bronx in the projects and guys walking by with the big boom boxes. And they weren't always playing tapes. Sometimes they were just playing the radio. You know, Kiss FM or WBLS. And then 92Q and Z100, all this New York State.
Right.
I learned the music that my parents wouldn't let me listen to just by being outside because people were blasting the radio. I mean, whole songs, Brian, not just little pieces of stuff. We were like, oh, that's the new Rick James song. Okay, you know, so I mean, that's just what was going on. So radio has definitely played a lot in the history for all of us coming up. If you think back, there's something that radio influenced you on. So
exactly. It's and you know, to your point, radio hasn't had to change the core of what it offers. Let's talk about it. It's free.
Yeah,
Radio is free, and it's available in every vehicle. I know you get the new car. It comes with the 6-month subscription for Sirius XM or whatever,
right.
And then you go, do I really want to pay $19.99 a month for it? And you know, when's the last time you won tickets to a concert on Sirius XM?
Never.
Never.
That does not happen. You know?
When you notice when you're listening to the streaming platforms, you know, you could be anywhere in the country and hear the same thing. And sometimes that's not a bad thing.
Right.
But sometimes you feel a little bit disconnected from your air, what's going on.
Right.
And you get the feeling with radio that what they're talking about is what everybody's talking about.
Right.
You know, I listen to Vic and Huggy in the morning, and they're talking about something, and then you get to work, and that conversation's going on at the water cooler.
Right.
And you know, radio still has the power of connecting people who might have seen different things, might have been binge watching different shows last night, might have been maybe you didn't watch the Oscars, but on your way to work, you heard the recap.
That's right.
You know, how many people didn't see the slap?
Slap around the world, yes.
But they heard about it. By the time they got to work the next day, they go, "Oh,
yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right. I mean, and these DJs, not only, I mean, these hosts or whatever, are they DJs now? What are they calling them on
personalities?
Personalities, right? Okay, so these personalities are also doing things in the community. So not like back when I was young, when I was listening to Frankie Crocker and all of these people who I would never meet.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm doing karaoke at MGM with Huggy Lowdown, or you know, I'm at Taco Tuesday with Vic Jagger. You know what I'm saying? Whoever it is,
right.
Now saying, okay, to keep our audience, let's do programs, let's sponsor stuff, let's get out there. And so now you can't just be a face that's made for radio. You actually have to get out there too, because before they used to make it seem like, oh, you can just be anybody as long as you got a voice. But now these personalities are full personalities. They're everywhere. They're doing performances and appearances, and you got DJs who come and do different like drive times, you know, and their places. They're doing parties on the weekend. So people are actually really getting into these personalities, and they're local people, you know, so people know them too. So it's a big thing. I think that a lot of people don't realize, we don't think about it because we don't have this conversation. That's why I'm glad you're on here, to let people realize how important radio is. So you're right. If there's some business owners out there that are listening to this and you're not using radio to promote your business, then this is probably something that you want to get into, because
you know, and that's what we try to do. We're at a point where you know, and back to the beginning of this conversation, we talked about, you know, nobody likes to hear the 20-minute commercial break, right? So, you know, one of the things that I've always tried to do is we have to innovate. We have to innovate and start thinking, okay, we're competing against pure play platforms. People who can download a playlist off of Spotify and hear no commercials at all, or they could pay a little bit and pay for Pandora and hear no commercials at all. So number one, our commercial breaks have to be well planned. They have the commercials themselves have to be relevant and entertaining. I don't want to hear a commercial that sounds like a commercial. I want to hear an extension of the content that I'm listening to.
Okay.
So that's one thing. We also have to think in terms of how do we place our advertisers as close to content as we can or inside of content. There are sometimes we will sponsor content, so I don't have to make you listen to a 60-second commercial. I can just say this news break is brought to you by Brian Watts Jewelry,
Right.
where you get blah, 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 blah. And then go right into that news content that the person's actually listening for.
Wow.
This traffic update is brought to you by such and such and such Dunkin' Donuts, where coffee for 99 cents, whatever it is.
Right.
You're going to accidentally hear that because they're about to talk about the traffic. So
Right.
before you can even turn the dial, I'm out of there. I'm
Right.
done. So that's but even a step further than that, Brian, is monetizing the part that people actually look forward to. So we have a personality on one of our stations who does she does this segment called Questions for the Culture.
Okay.
And it's on our hip hop station. And it's always, a question that if you're a person of color, you should probably know the answer to this question. Don't put raisins in the
potato salad.
Right. So things like that. They're not always that easy.
Right.
But I challenge my team. That really has caught on. That segment, she does it at 4:00 every afternoon. Okay. And why don't we sponsor that? Questions for the Culture, brought to you by. There you go. And you're out of there.
Right.
Now I don't have to worry about did somebody stay through the commercial break to hear my commercial where I talk about how good my product is. They heard it because they were listening to Questions for the Culture.
That's right.
It's engaging, it is funny, and sometimes that goes further. Have you ever seen the message on the dashboard while you're listening to the radio? You may be in a commercial break and then it says, whatever station you're listening to, and then all of a sudden it flips to an advertiser.
Right.
We've done that before with personal injury attorney. They may want their quick message, their phone number across the dash. In a wreck, get a check.
Right.
Yeah. But those are ways.
Flashy phone numbers, something that'll stay in your mind. Right.
There you go. There are ways to integrate your clients into content without an annoying 60-second, 30-second commercial. They do have their place, but we want to limit the number of those because the other side of the building gets mad when we do 10-minute commercial breaks because they're trying to get ratings.
Right.
I'm trying to maximize revenue, and we have to work together.
Wow, that's a lot of education right there, man. I'm glad that you're on here to tell us. Speaking of commercials, we are going to take a commercial break right now. We will be right back, y'all, with Brian McGhee.
Brian J.T. Watts is the owner and founder of the Brian Watts and Just Let Me Teach companies. During his time as an administrator and as an international instructor, he has viewed education from various vantage points. His life and professional experiences have equipped him with object lessons, logic, stories, and an appropriate humor that he utilizes to enhance presentations and connect with the audience. He is also a multifaceted educational consultant that provides seminars for parents and motivational experiences for students. Additionally, he offers classroom management, student engagement, and new faculty seminars, which are professional development seminars for teachers. As you know, he has a wide variety of services to offer, but today we are focusing on his parent seminars. There are many reasons why parents need this seminar. Schools and education has been enhanced greatly by professional development for teachers and improving students, textbooks, technology, and the list goes on and on. Unfortunately, someone forgot about informing the parents. The seminars are based off the book he authored, How to Help Your Children Help Themselves. His program will educate parents on some of the things that are going on in our schools today. He will discuss school choice, relationships with teachers, and most importantly, the relationships with your children in education. So, if you are a parent or decision maker at your school or school district, please consider hosting How to Help Your Children Help Themselves seminar. He would love to come and talk with you, and let's get the parenting back into education.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back still with Brian McGhee, Director of Sales for Radio 1 DC. Brian, tell me this. I know you said that it was intentional to come into a company that sort of made sure they were in our community and were dedicated to doing things for our community. I'm sure that your ability to get that intention did not start in the beginning when you started in your whole profession and you started to move out of college. Tell me, were there any obstacles or issues that you dealt with as far as being a Black man in radio, coming from, because you've been in a couple of different positions, you've lived in a few different places. How has that worked for you?
Wow, the way you phrase that question, very interesting. And my answer, I'm going to try to be concise. There have been obstacles, but everything has happened for me.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer things don't happen to you, they happen for you, and you don't know it at the time. When I re-entered radio, because I was obsessed with radio as a child. I was just obsessed with radio. I grew up in Chicago. Some of the best personalities and DJs, legendary names, Doug Banks, Tom Joyner, all of them started in Chicago. And I grew up listening to very entertaining radio. I actually had dreams of having a talk show. I wanted to be a talk show host. And you met me in college when I was doing, afternoons and then eventually mornings on the college station,
Right.
as close as I ever got to that talk show that I wanted. After I got out of college, I did go to work at a music station just outside of Chicago, and did, was a DJ there for a couple of years. But what I got out of the radio business altogether, and without going through my whole life, I came back to radio because I was in a sales job and I was in my car listening to my favorite station, and they ran a commercial saying they needed salespeople. And I thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow, I used to be on the radio, but I never thought about being on the other side of the, I told you there were two sides of the building, like two different, and these people don't really deal with these people too much.
Right.
So I thought I threw my name in the hat, and I got to the next step, and I got to the next round, and I got to the next round. And finally I got offered the job that I think hundreds of people had applied for, because that commercial was running a lot. But I was chosen. And this was in a particular part of the country where there was not a significant Black population, and it was a college town, but not enough Black people to have an R&B station at all. So the closest we had was a top 40. It was a pop station.
Wow.
But had a country station, had a news talk station, had a easy listening station, and a sports station. So it was a nice little range of stations. And I started my career in an area like that. I was the only person of color on the staff. In fact, I was the only one in the whole building. Now that I think about it. But when I said everything happens for you, not to you, I think I could have seen that as an obstacle, or you could look at it as an opportunity. And I looked at it as an opportunity to be unique. And, one advantage I would say I had is when I was knocking on doors and I was going out to reach advertisers, they never forgot who I was, because I was probably the only person who looked like me that they had seen that day or that week.
Right.
It helps to be a good communicator. I was able to quickly establish that, okay, we might not look alike, but I can communicate to you on your level, and I understand. I'm not, I went to Oakwood University, so just as smart as you,
right?
Advertiser. But I took that, and what it helped me at the next leg of my career, where I was in Nashville. I went to sell in a much larger area. I went from a small town to the big city to see, well, can you really do this? And I
city at that, yeah.
And radio's a thing in Nashville. So I got there and found that I could hold my own there. Not only could I sell with the big dogs, but I actually was told by my manager that one day you're going to be a manager. I can see it. And she's so right, because my old station, had an opening for a manager, and I actually ended up moving my family back.
Wow.
Small town, because I got an opportunity to go from salesperson to manager,
Right.
and I went back to manage, my peers.
Right.
And there were other steps after that where I went to a little bit bigger city, went to St. Louis,
Right.
which was even bigger than Nashville, and that at that level. And then there was a Black population. And so then we did have Black stations. So every step that I took prepared me for the next step, and where I eventually ended up back in Chicago, where I grew up, which was the largest market to this point that I've been in. And where I grew up, the stations I grew up listening to, I was now managing the sales team for those stations, which was really crazy and surreal to think about it. But this particular position I'm in right now, when I say it was intentional, everything that I've learned along the way, and I know this is a long answer to your question.
Oh, go for it.
But what I haven't been able to do is I haven't been able to work for a company that has this unique relationship with us. And I have worked for stations that, had a hip hop station. I've worked for companies that maybe we had an R&B station and a hip hop station. Maybe we had even a gospel station, but our company was built on communicating to the Black audience. And if you watch the movie Talk to Me with Don Cheadle from years ago, I know there's another movie called Talk to Me, but the one with Don Cheadle, P.D. Green, who was an ex-con who ends up getting his talk show on the air, that was real. That was 100% real. And that was how our flagship station here in D.C. got started. And I just got fascinated with that story.
Right.
And I thought, man, I could actually work for this company that isn't just interested in getting a portion of their revenue from the Black community. Everything they do is aimed at informing and entertaining and educating us.
Right.
And so I think it's more than selling advertising, Brian. It's more than trying to make as much money as we can, for the stations, but it's an opportunity. I manage a team of mostly African American, which is amazing to me because I've never had that. I've always had a couple of people who look like me on the team, but never have I been able to really be my authentic self and impact the lives and careers of people who look like me, man. And that's so rewarding because I've been in really good positions. I've worked for some great companies, and I will never disparage any of those companies, but this was unique because of that.
Wow, it's weird because your span is sort of the opposite of most people's. You went out into other communities and prepared yourself to come back home. You know what I'm saying? Where most people of in our community are trying to work through all of our stuff so they get good enough to go out somewhere. So you did it all and came back home with all your stuff. Like here I am. The prodigal son is back. So, or whatever it is. But you came home and did your thing, and you didn't forget who you were. You didn't lose any of who you were. You just became better, and that's a good thing. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of us need to realize is that you're not selling out going to hone your craft somewhere else. You may end up back here with everybody else. You may be able to do something big for your community in your industry, or you may just be able to be a light or a beacon in your community because of what else you're doing. So I think that's very positive. I know you're a family man. I know you like to still get out and have some fun, do some good stuff out there. I've met some of your kids. I see you as a very positive person. And I was just a joy to say, hey, let me get him on the show because for real, how we're being shown everywhere we are.
Yeah.
I wanted to be, I felt like it was, I don't know if it was my job, but because I kept thinking about how we were being portrayed and there's not a lot of good. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do something good. So I want to keep bringing brothers on like you, letting you tell your story. There are people who know nothing about radio who now will know a lot more and say, hey, maybe that's something I want to get into. You know what I'm saying? What advice would you have for somebody right now who's saying, you know what, radio, whether it's the programming side or the sales side,
Right.
radio is something I want to be involved in. What would you tell them to start doing now? Let's say a high school person or somebody who's not in school. What are the kind of things they can jump into to get into this industry?
Man, that's the best question I think I've ever been asked. And I will tell you, if I could give any advice to somebody considering a career in media, whether it's in front behind the mic or selling and generating the revenue, be obsessed with something. Be obsessed with something because your success is going to depend on what you are obsessed with. Obsession leads to success. I remember falling asleep to the radio because I wanted to hear the guy who had the talk show, and he didn't come on until midnight. I wanted to hear the first 2 hours of his show, and I remember just having that little radio next to my ear, right by the pillow. And I didn't want it to be loud enough for my mom to hear it, but I wanted to hear his show. And he just had call after call, and he was quick-witted. And I was like, man, I want to do that. But even though that didn't happen, I was obsessed with the radio. And I think when you become obsessed with something, you end up accidentally putting in the work that it takes to become great. Because everything, the 10,000 hours rule and all the things we've read and we've heard from other, motivational speakers, but all of that is true. Right. You have to put in the time and find something that you're obsessed with, and bring out. Everything changes. Radio is different than it was, when I was growing up. Wow. But podcasts are a form of to me, it's all audio.
Right.
That what radio is, it just happens to be a podcast in real time.
That's right.
That everybody's listening to at the same time. Yeah. So when you think about it like that, man, radio is not going anywhere. It's going to be around a long time. And I think there's plenty of opportunity for somebody who wants to get into it and is excited by that.
Okay. Great. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you don't have a lot of time because you're a very busy man, but I appreciate you coming out and talking to my viewers. We definitely appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Brian McGhee here of Radio 1 DC, and that's our show for tonight. Any last comments you want to say?
Oh, man, you do a wonderful job, man. I love the show, and I love that you had me on. I didn't think I had anything interesting to say, but you're very good at what you do because you brought a lot out. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Maybe y'all can hire me at the radio station. But
there we go. There it is. I knew that was coming.
We'll see. Well, I have to wait for the compliment first, but we'll see what happens. But all right. Well, thanks a lot, man. We'll talk
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.